What we're going to do today is replace the top head on a high tension head with the Kevlar heads. And the way we do that, first of all, with the Scottish drums, we have a snare strainer under the top head. And we're going to loosen the tension on that first, just to get that pulled down and out of the way, so that when we start taking this head off, it's not going to pull on those snares at all. So the snares are off. Now all we're going to do is, I'm using 2 keys. We're just going to pull this head off, and some of them might be a little tight. We're going to go across, and as you go, of course, it will get easier. Okay, now that we have the head, all the lugs are taken out, you want to make sure that we don't lose any of these parts when we pull the head off. There's lug locks that hold these lugs in place. We want to make sure that they stay on, and let's pull this off. Okay. Make sure that you pull it off evenly so that you're not scraping anything or pulling or damaging that head. And you just put this down to the side. Okay, sometimes you have to pry these heads off a little bit if they've been on there for a while, especially if you've been playing out, and the drum has been in the rain or elements. You might have to kind of like pry these heads up evenly. This one is loose, it's a brand new drum, but you just pull this off, and then you inspect the head and make sure it's okay. And then of course, if you're replacing the head, you'd have a new head to put on anyway. But check the inside, make sure no parts have come loose, nothing is rattling inside, and make sure that you don't have any broken snares. They should all be pretty much the even tension all the way across, and it looks like you're good to go. So we're going to replace the head. One thing that you want to do is take some, well, you can use different types of grease, but white lithium grease is the best thing to put on right into these lug holes where these lugs screw into, because you want to have this lubrication go around the head to where it'll pull that in nice and tight. If you have a dry lug, let's say it's dry, you might assume that it's tight, and it's not really tight. It's just not working well. So what you want to do is make sure that you put a dab of this in every one of these. Just all you need is just a little bit. Okay, now we have the top head off, and we're also, with some drums, you may want to use a wax, beeswax, or any kind of seal wax. And what you would want to do is put that on the top of the head, lightly around the top, so the head stretches. This is a very nice chrome rim on here. It doesn't really need it. Some people may want to do it anyway, but you want to put this little bit of wax along the top so that when you put the head on, it does tend to slip better and seat better. Okay, now it's time to put the head on. You've already inspected your drum. You want to make sure that it's clean inside, nothing loose. And you want to put the logo facing at 12 o'clock against your body, the way that you'd want it. Then that way, at a quick glance, you can tell which way the drum is facing. So what I do is I put it on the drum head, press down just gently in the middle, make sure it's seated everywhere. And then we're going to use some of the lithium grease. And you're just going to use a little dab of that grease in each one of these. Okay, now that we've got all of our lugs lubricated, it's time to put the rim back on. Again, you want to be careful putting everything in place. That lithium grease, we want to get all that off, any residual, just so it doesn't smear anything, but you do want to have it seat right. There we go. I always press down a little bit to make sure that everything is in place. Okay, now you want to make sure that all your lug locks are in place. So you don't have any that were facing the other way or something when you had placed the rim down, and you're ready to start with the tension. Now a lot of people use different methods. They go across. Some people use a star design. It's really up to you on what you feel works the best. Experimentation is good. It doesn't really matter as long as the head doesn't become off-seated. So right now, what I do is I just go through and I hand tighten these to the point where you can feel, as you get tighter down, you can feel the tension becoming more and more and more. Right now they're just loose. So let that grease work into the threads. That'll make your drum last years. It'll prolong the life of your drum for years compared to if you don't start putting some lubricant in those lugs. There again, I just go until they stop. Once you get all the lugs just somewhat snugged into their spots, it's still loose somewhat, I usually push on the head, make sure that it's seated in the right. You don't have to put a lot of pressure on it, but just enough to get it seated with the rim. Okay, now to tune your drum. This works for some of us. Depends upon, there's probably 100 different ways to tune a drum. It just depends on what works for you, and experimentation again. You have to see what works, what doesn't. What works for some of us is I start off just with one key. I tighten, I go in a circular pattern. I just go until it's just maybe 1/8 of a turn, snugging these down again. Now you can use a star pattern going back and forth, but I'm not really tightening anything yet. I'm just getting these a little bit above thumb tightness. Just making sure that the head is even along with the head or the rim. And there's where we started. From here now, it depends upon what you want to do. If you want to start going in a star pattern, again, it doesn't hurt to press down on his head again, all the way through this pattern of doing this. Make sure that it is depressed. So we'll start off going across. There we go. Now I start going in a circular pattern. Again, that's up to person's preference. I like going around in a circle. I can see the tension. I can feel the different tension of the lugs as we go along. And again, it's what works for you. And as you get down to where you start feeling a lot of tension on the head, that's when you can feel the difference in the wrench as far as the tightness, and you want to have it, as you get the head tighter, you want to take less turns because that head is still stretching and still seating. Again, through this process, I'll take it and press down on it. It gives it a little help. If you hear cracks once in a while or a cracking, that doesn't mean the head is breaking. It just means everything's pulling tight. That sounds about right for now anyway. And that's how you replace the drum head.